Looking at footage of the approach to Euston, captured at the end of 2024, you could be forgiven for thinking that some parts of the approach look almost complete, particularly the Granbury Terrace Bridge extension. However, the progress made over the past few years has just been the prelude to a much more intensive period of work which is due to commence. Such is the scale of the task at Euston, this update will be split into two, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next fascinating part. Although construction of Euston Station was paused in 2023, work in fact never came to a complete stop, as stopping work on key sections that were already being progressed was never a realistic option. Although work did slow considerably, and some sites were brought to a so-called safe stop, a process which in itself can take weeks or months to complete. The main elements that were paused were mostly around the tunnelling from Old Oak Common to Euston. This means that progress on the ventilation shafts came to a stop. Prior to the pause, the Adelaide Road ventilation shaft, situated alongside the West Coast Main Line to the northwest of Euston Station, was excavated down to the level of the existing tracks, and the Canterbury Work shaft in South Kilburn had reached base level. Bringing the sites to a safe stop meant ensuring that excavations that had already been dug or structures built were in a safe state that they could be left for what could have been an undetermined period of time without posing risk to workers or the public. Despite the slowdown and uncertainty about whether or not trains would ever reach Euston, a lot of work has been carried out in and around the station, and the two joint ventures working on the new station and the approach have done as much as they can with the reduced funding that was available at the time. A funding settlement was finally agreed by the Treasury last year, which meant that tunnelling to Euston could finally commence. And in January this year, the first of the two tunnel boring machines that will construct the twin-bore Euston Tunnel was launched. The second TBM is also due to begin its 7.2km long journey imminently. Although funding has been agreed for the tunnel to Euston, questions still remain about how the station itself will be funded. Admittedly, I haven't been following the developments around the Euston Partnership closely, but I know someone who is able to provide a little more background.
Hello, Michael here from Network News. I've been brought in to help discuss what's going on at Euston because, frankly, it's all very confusing. Since the decision was made to take control of Euston away from HS2 Limited in 2023, multiple different organisations and boards have been set up to shape the future transport interchange, often with competing agendas. The first of these is the Euston Partnership Board, which had already been set up in July 2020 to coordinate all the relevant stakeholders and come up with a combined vision for the so-called Euston campus area, which covers everything from the new HS2 station to an upgrade of the existing National Rail station, as well as improvements to surrounding infrastructure such as the London Underground, and of course the new oversight development above the station, which itself is being led by Lend-Lease. The role of the Euston Partnership is mostly about coordinating all these different stakeholders' interests, rather than actually developing any firm plans. Then, you've got the Euston Delivery Company, which was established in July 2025 to act as a directing mind coordinating the design and delivery of the station and its surroundings. This organisation is still very much in its infancy, but it will play a much more important role in the future. Simultaneously, you've got the DFT issuing a preliminary market engagement notice for a public-private partnership to actually deliver the station. At this stage, it's still early days for this as well, with the main objective of the market engagement seemingly being to gauge the level of interest from potential investors, as well as understanding their priorities going forward and how to best structure the procurement process. In the future, it's likely that the Euston Delivery Company will gradually take over this function from the DFT, becoming the sole directing authority for the Euston project, though its actions will probably still be shaped by feedback from the Euston Partnership Board. The delivery company will then be responsible for appointing and overseeing a private sector organisation that will design, build, finance and maintain the station over a set period of time. That's about all we know at this stage, since, as I mentioned earlier, the organisation is still very much in its infancy, and there's still a lot of questions left unanswered about what the station itself will actually look like, which it doesn't sound like we'll be getting any answers to anytime soon either. Hopefully more details can be released soon, because at the moment, every day that passes is another day of uncertainty for local residents and a further delay to the opening of the station, which is already running several years behind schedule. It's maddening to me that we're on our, third redesign and still don't have a firm plan in place yet. Hopefully everybody involved is able to come up with something sooner rather than later. I'll likely provide an update on my channel when they do, but that's for the future. And for now, I'll hand you back to Chris.
Thank you to Michael from Network News for that update, it was appreciated. Links to his channel in the description. As you can appreciate, all of this uncertainty has delayed progress considerably, and work that should have been underway by now will not begin until next year. However, the funding settlement has provided more certainty, and work will begin to intensify over the next 12 months. Between Hampstead Road and Euston Tunnels, SCSJV will have to replace a key road, excavate an enormous retained cutting, and build 3 approach tunnels. Meanwhile, the Maestro-Gardos joint venture will continue to prepare the site for the construction of the new station. So far, a new substation building has been constructed to replace the existing Leslie Green building, which will eventually be dismantled, and any tiles that can be saved will be. The equipment within the new TSS has now been installed and commissioned, and final tests are now underway. As for progress on the approach, although the Granbury Terrace Bridge extension has now mostly been completed, the bridge is currently being used to support the utilities that run along Hampstead Road, which will be housed within the blue structure. The temporary diversion of the utilities will allow SCS to begin work on the Hampstead Road Bridge extension. As you can appreciate, it would be difficult to close a busy main road in central London. Therefore, SCS will first have to build a temporary bypass road. Stitching the existing and temporary parts of the road, and then realigning the road over the new bridge, will likely require some closures. But Hampstead Road will mostly remain open during the construction process. The temporary road will be completed and brought into use by February 2027. It will then take until summer 2029 to remove the old road and build the new bridge. This will be made all the more difficult by the route of the Northern Line, which passes underneath Hampstead Road. Piles will therefore have to be installed for the new bridge between the Northern Line tunnels, with a 5-metre exclusion zone set either side of the tunnels. As you can see to the north of Hampstead Road, excavation has begun on part of the retained cutting for the station throat. The new Euston station won't quite be underground, but it will be constructed in a box. Therefore, the entire length from the tunnels to the station will have to be excavated. To prepare for this, SCS has been strengthening the existing retaining wall that runs the length of Park Village East, and has installed piles to extend the depth of the wall. Work has also been taking place next to the West Coast Main Line to prepare for excavation. The section north of Granbury Terrace Bridge will be excavated, although presently it looks like there's a concrete floor. However, this is just a temporary blinding layer used during the construction of the bridge and other piling work. The section between GTB and the tunnel portals will be completely covered by a concrete slab. Therefore, the so-called scissor cut will effectively be underground. The cut gets its name from the scissor crossovers that will eventually be installed and will allow trains to reach all of the platforms. Initially, it's likely that only 6 platforms will be constructed, although thankfully it does now appear that the station will be constructed in such a way that further platforms could be added in future. Due to space constraints, it is impossible to use the more preferable inline double switch arrangement, hence the use of the double crossover. The slab above the scissor cut will be used for oversight development, and will therefore be constructed in such a way that it is able to support the proposed new buildings. Although the slab and required piling has undoubtedly added to the cost of HS2, the inclusion of OSD is seen as a crucial part of the overall Euston master plan. Frustratingly, however, it seems that this will appear as a cost to HS2, without being set against any future financial gains from the development. Excavation of a huge box will clearly generate a massive amount of spoil, which would generate an unwelcome amount of lorry movements. Thankfully though, track 17 at Euston Station will be used to move the material by rail, which will see up to 10 freight trains per week leaving Euston loaded with spoil. Despite the fact that Euston Station is going through yet another redesign, Maestro Gardos are continuing to prepare the site, and a huge tent has now been erected for the latest round of archaeological work, which will include exhumations. This must be completed before the box for the new station can be excavated. The next video will take a closer look at the construction of the approach tunnels, which will be a monumental undertaking in itself, so make sure you don't miss that video. Just before I go, could I ask that if you found this video informative, that you please give it a like, as it helps my content to get noticed.